It is still dark on the empire's northern frontier, a military camp somewhere along the Danube, years into a war. The most powerful man in the known world is awake before his household, and before he has moved from where he lies, he is already at work, not on the empire, on himself. He is talking himself through the day that hasn't started yet. Begin the morning by saying to thyself, I shall meet with the busybody, the ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, unsocial. These are the first words of the second book of his private journal. Marcus Aurelius is not writing wisdom for you. He is doing a drill, the kind he runs again and again in these pages, because he knows that if he walks into the day unprepared, the day will run him. This is what almost nobody tells you about Stoicism. It was never just a set of beliefs the Romans held. It was a set of exercises they ran, repeated, rehearsed, returned to, for life. So that's what we're going to do. Walk one day from before you open your eyes to the last thought before sleep, and put every famous Stoic practice back into the rhythm of a life. Most of us meet Stoicism as a pile of quotes, a line from Marcus on a dark background, Memento Mori on a coin. The dichotomy of control, explained in 40 seconds over a stock video of a mountain. We collect these the way we collect everything now, fast, flat, and out of order. And then we wonder why none of it seems to do anything when a real Tuesday arrives. The Stoics would not have recognized that version of their philosophy. To them, a quote you admired but didn't practice was a kind of self-deception. Late in his handbook, The Enchiridion, Epictetus is blunt about it. Never call yourself a philosopher, nor talk a great deal among the unlearned about theorems, but act conformably to them. Don't perform the vocabulary, just run the practices quietly, and let the results be the only evidence. One honest caveat before we start. The Stoics never published a fixed daily timetable. This dawn-to-night order is our arrangement, but every exercise in it is real, and everyone had a natural moment in a day. The first exercise happens in the gap between waking and rising, the one moment you get to set the frame before the world sets it for you. Marcus's morning passage is the model. He doesn't begin the day by visualizing success or listing what he's grateful for. He begins by rehearsing difficulty, reminding himself that he will meet people who are ungrateful and arrogant and deceitful, that this is simply what some people are, and none of it is a personal surprise sent to ruin his morning. The point isn't pessimism. The point is no ambush. If you've already met the difficult person in your mind, in the quiet, you don't meet them for the first time at full volume in the afternoon. You've preloaded the response. This shades into the most famous version of the practice, which later writers named premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity, deliberately, calmly picturing what could go wrong before it does, not to dread it, to disarm it. A quick note, because precision is the whole point here. Premeditatio malorum is a label scholars apply now. Marcus never used those words. What he did was the thing. And the thing is genuinely ancient, threaded through Seneca and Epictetus as well. Done honestly, this has a strange effect. You expect imagining the day's troubles to make you anxious. Instead, it tends to make you calm. Because most of what we fear is vague, and vague fear is the heaviest kind. Name the specific thing. Look straight at it before breakfast, and it shrinks to its actual size. There's a second move the Stoics built into the morning, one almost nobody outside the tradition has heard of, even though it might be the most quietly useful idea they had. They called it acting with a reserve clause. The Greek term is hypexeresis, in Latin, exceptio, a small mental footnote attached to every plan. You set out to do something, close the deal, have the conversation, finish the work. But you add, under your breath, fate permitting, I'll do my full part. The outcome is not mine to guarantee. This sounds like a technicality. It's actually the hinge the whole system turns on. The Stoics divided the world into what is up to you, your judgments, your choices, your effort, and what is not, outcomes, other people, the result. The reserve clause is how you act fully inside the first category without staking your peace on the second. Most of our suffering comes from gripping the part we don't control, as if effort alone could force it. The reserve clause loosens that grip. Without loosening the effort, you still try with everything you have. You just stop demanding that reality cooperate. That's the morning. Frame the day, rehearse the difficulty, hold the outcome loosely. Now the day begins, and the next exercise runs all day long. Here is the exercise the Stoics considered the engine of the whole practice. Everything else is, in a sense, training for this one moment, which happens hundreds of times a day. Something happens. An email lands, a tone of voice, a look. The Stoics called this raw arrival an impression, a fantasia. And in the gap between the impression arriving and you reacting, there's a decision most people never realize they're making. The decision is whether to assent, whether to sign off on the story the impression is trying to sell you, because the impression never arrives alone. He didn't reply, arrives wearing a verdict. He's angry, you've failed, this is going wrong. The exercise is to catch the impression at the door before you sign and separate the bare fact from the story stapled to it. This is the practice underneath the single most quoted line in all of Stoicism. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the principles and notions which they form concerning things. We usually hear that as a nice idea. Events are neutral. Your interpretation is what hurts. But Epictetus meant it as an instruction. It marks the exact spot where you can intervene. Not out in the world where the event happened, but in the half-second where you decide what it means. You can't always stop the impression from arriving. You can learn to pause before you assent to it. He didn't reply is a fact. He's done with me is a story I chose to sign. The exercise is to notice the signing, and more often than you'd think, decline. This is the rep you do all day. You'll miss most of them. That's expected. The Stoics weren't aiming for a perfect record. They were aiming for the pause to become a habit, so that sometimes, in the moments that matter, it's there. The next exercise doesn't run every day. It's something you schedule. And it's one of the strangest sounding things the Stoics did until you try it. They practiced being poor on purpose. Seneca lays it out plainly in a letter to his friend Lucilius. Set aside a few days, live on the cheapest, plainest food, wear the roughest clothes, sleep hard, and as you do, ask one question. Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared? Is this it? Is this the thing I've been quietly afraid of all this time? You expose yourself on purpose in safe doses to the exact loss you dread, and discover that on the other side of it, you're still here, still fine. The fear was bigger than the thing. You build resilience in good weather, the way a soldier trains in peacetime so the battle isn't the first time he's held the sword. You don't wait for loss to teach you that you can survive loss. Now something goes wrong in the middle of the day. The plan breaks. The Stoics had an exercise for this exact moment, probably the one you've heard compressed into a slogan. You may know the phrase, The obstacle is the way. Quick correction, that's the title of a modern book. The Stoic original is sharper. Marcus wrote it in the 5th book of the Meditations. The mind converts and changes every hindrance to its activity into an aid, and so that which is a hindrance is made a furtherance to an act. He's not saying obstacles are secretly good, or that everything happens for a reason. He's saying something more precise. The mind can take the thing blocking it and use that very thing as fuel for the next action. The interruption that wrecks your focus becomes the occasion to practice patience. The difficult person becomes the material for practicing tolerance. The setback becomes the exact training the virtue needed. The obstacle doesn't get removed, it gets repurposed. When the day gets too loud, too close, too tangled, too important, the Stoics had a way of stepping back. Modern scholars named it the view from above. Marcus didn't call it that. He just kept doing it. You imagine yourself rising above your own situation, above the room, the city, the whole earth, until you can see the countless other lives running in parallel, the generations before and after, the sheer scale of it all. Marcus does this repeatedly. Look down from above on the countless herds of men, and from that height, the thing that felt enormous a moment ago, the slight, the worry, the crisis of the afternoon, finds its real proportion. Not erased, proportioned. You can still care about it, you just stop mistaking it for the size of the universe. It's a deliberate zoom out, a reminder that you are one life among billions, briefly here, and that most of what feels permanent right now won't be remembered by anyone, including you, in a year. It sounds like it should be bleak. In practice, it's a relief. Underneath all of these, framing the whole day, is the exercise the Stoics returned to more than any other. You know its name. Memento Mori. Remember that you will die. The pop version is a coin and a moody caption. The actual Stoic instruction from Epictetus is more demanding. Let death and exile and all other things which appear terrible be daily before your eyes, but chiefly death. And you will never entertain any abject thought, nor too eagerly covet anything. Daily before your eyes. Not once, in a dark moment, daily, as a deliberate practice. Keep your own death in view, and watch what it does to the day. The petty grievance loosens its grip. The thing you've been putting off becomes urgent. The hour you have right now stops being something to get through and becomes, briefly, the only thing you actually own. Memento Mori is so central to the Stoics that it deserves a full episode of its own, and almost everything you've heard about it gets the purpose backwards. It was never meant to make you morbid. It was meant to make you awake. We'll come back to that. For now, hold it where the Stoics held it, as the quiet frame around everything else. And then the day ends. The day is over, the house is quiet, and the Stoic does the exercise that mirrors the morning one, the bookend. If you've been here before, this is the practice we ended the last episode on, the one the philosopher Sextius did every night, that Seneca borrowed and made his own. Before sleep, Sextius would replay the entire day and ask 3 questions. What bad habit of yours have you cured today? What vice have you checked? In what respect are you better? Notice what these are not. They're not, what did I get done? They're not a productivity audit. They're about the only territory the Stoics thought was truly yours, your own character, your own conduct. Where did I act against what I value today? Where was I better than yesterday? What do I want to catch tomorrow? And notice the tone. Seneca is explicit that this is not a courtroom where you punish yourself. It's an honest accounting, done calmly, with the lights off, and then you sleep. The point isn't guilt. It's that a habit you examine every night is a habit you slowly get a grip on. The unexamined reaction runs you. The examined one eventually doesn't. The morning rehearses the day forward. The evening reviews it back. You run that loop every single day for as long as you live. That repetition isn't a sign you're failing to get it. It's the whole method. Which brings us to the thing hiding in plain sight this entire time. We've been quoting Marcus Aurelius' Meditations throughout this episode as if it were a book of wisdom. It's time to say what it actually is. Marcus never wrote it for you. He never wrote it for anyone. It has no title he gave it, no reader he intended, no argument it's trying to win. The Greek heading is closer to himself. It's 12 books of a man talking to himself, in private, for no audience that was ever supposed to exist. And here's what you notice once you know that. It repeats, endlessly, the same handful of reminders, written again and again across years. Remember, you'll die. Remember what's in your control and what isn't. Remember to zoom out. He writes the same lessons hundreds of times, not because he forgot them, because knowing them was never the point. The most powerful man in the world, who had studied this philosophy his entire adult life, still had to run the drills every day, because the drills were the philosophy. Meditations reads less like a book of answers than a practice log. The exercises we just walked through, caught in the act by the one Stoic who happened to write his reps down. One of the most quoted philosophical texts in the world is, in a sense, somebody's homework. And that's the most hopeful thing about it. Because if Marcus Aurelius had to keep practicing, forever, imperfectly, the same lessons on repeat, then the gap you feel between knowing this and living it isn't a sign you've failed. It's the normal condition of the work. The practice was never supposed to end. So here is the single exercise to take, if you take one. Tonight, before you sleep, run the evening review. 2 minutes, no app, no journal. Just replay the day once and ask Sextius's 3 questions, gently. Where did I act against what I value today? Where was I better than yesterday? What do I want to catch tomorrow? Don't grade yourself. Don't fix anything. Just look, honestly, with the lights off, and let the day go. Do it once, and it's a curiosity. Do it for a week, and you'll start catching your own patterns in daylight before they run you. That's not a belief you're adopting. It's an exercise you're running. And the part of Stoicism that actually changes you was never the belief. It was always the practice. The Stoics built a whole day out of practices, but they weren't the only ones who understood that knowing a teaching and being changed by it are completely different things. Next, we cross traditions to the path the Buddha laid out. Not the philosophy of it, the practice of it. What it actually asks you to do, day after day, and why he insisted, like the Stoics, that understanding was never going to be enough. If walking through these exercises puts something back in order for you, subscribe and stay for the next one. And if you know someone collecting quotes they've never once practiced, send them this. Gently. It's an evening review kind of favor.